I'll start with what our story is in a sentence, and that is redemption, restoration, and the kindness of God.
But to see that mindset of saying, if I'm still growing and learning, I can keep integrating that into my family and passing it on to my kids. And I think your approach obviously is going to give people a whole bunch of new ways that they might do that they might take their recovery story of sexual brokenness and say, well, how does that become more than just a story about our sexuality, but kind of encompass our whole family and living under God's design? But I think it starts with that belief that it's not too late.
The failure to self-govern well. We don't govern our being the way God made us and empowered us to live from the Spirit, to inform our mind, to, carry out in our emotions and to walk it out in our body.
And we really believe that, marriage started in the garden, right? He took Eve out and then he brings them back together as one. And in that, we only together can we produce life. That's in the form of natural children, but it's also the life that God breathed into us that we get to reproduce.
Hello there, good listener. I am your host, Nick Stumbo, and you are listening to the Pure Desire Podcast, your biblically based and clinically informed approach to healing from betrayal and breaking free from all forms of compulsive sexual behavior. And whether today is your first day in recovery or 10,000th day, we hope this is a place where you can hear safe conversations you've maybe never gotten to be a part of before. This is episode 440, and here joining me as my co-host throughout this series is the one and only Mr. John Begeman. John, welcome back to the podcast.
I'll be home for Christmas. I'm going to leave it right there because I don't want to sing too long.
We just had this conversation last week, although in reality, a little behind the curtains moment, it was like 6 months ago.
True. It is true.
But in the world of release dates, last week we talked about that you weren't going to sing, and now here you are back singing again.
I know. Well, I just had to shake it up. I had to keep the audience guessing. And here's the best part. Home, family, this is kind of what the episode got into today. And so not only will I actually be home for Christmas, if you're wondering, I will be back in South Dakota, shout out the Midwest, but also this is kind of what Randy and Leslie's Hearts are all about.
Yeah, today is part 2 out of 5 in our series that we are doing this December on the gift of recovery. So we're going to be sharing stories all month. Why is it, or maybe speak to this for a minute, John, how can our stories be a gift to someone else?
Well, I was just reminded recently of, honestly, when I was 18, and somebody went first with their story for the first time, they said things that I didn't even know I was allowed to say. And they gave me permission. And I would say his story that day was the greatest catalyst of hope that something could change in my own story. And it gave me the permission to go second. And so I think for so many, hopefully this episode and these episodes in December will give others to say, oh, wow, that's in my story.
Yeah.
And give people the courage to put voice to things that they've never even thought to put voice to.
Yeah, we can identify with other people's stories. And I think that will be true for many people with Randy and Leslie's story, because Randy and Leslie have both walked through broken marriages in their past, and God has done something new in their lives that they feel has really led them to a way of seeing family, seeing relationships from a whole new perspective that I think our listeners will be encouraged by. And so whether you have adult kids or young kids or thinking of having kids, I think this is a story that really incorporates the family dynamic and helps us see how our recovery can also be something that translates into how we raise our children and raise a family. So a bit about the Bixbys. Randy is a best-selling author, speaker, trainer, and minister who holds a doctorate in leadership and cultural transformation. He is an ICF certified executive and life coach. And Lesli is a speaker, trainer, minister, and ICF certified executive and life coach as well. And they are the co-hosts of the podcast, Transforming Families, with Randy and Leslie, and co-founders of the Family Reformation Project, which you will hear them talk about in this episode. So here now is part 2 of 5 in the Gift of Recovery series with Randy and Leslie Bixby. Dr. Randall and Leslie Bixby, welcome to the Pure Desire Podcast. Great to have you today.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
We are always excited to have new guests on the podcast. And when we do, we typically ask them a little bit about their own journey. And so we'll get to that. But first, Randy, Leslie, just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, we're a son and daughter of God, and we are husband and wife. We see ourselves as one in His design, and we have the privilege of having 5 children in a blended family and 13 grandchildren
And counting.
and counting. And the Lord has just done miracles in our family, and we're just so humbled by that. And we never set out to do this, but He has led us in such a way that now we're leading a global movement to restore families to His design. And it's amazingly necessary, needed, and valuable, rewarding work. Would you add anything?
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many questions. My brain is just jumping all over the place. And I love the language that you guys are getting to use. And again, just pause and simply say, congrats on the 5 kids and 13 grandkids. That's so cool.
Thank you.
And just simply to say, if you guys are out to transform marriages, I can only imagine that your marriage at some point was really broken, and would just be so honored to be invited and to hear more of that journey for you guys as a couple, maybe from transformation to where you guys are now.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll start with what our story is in a sentence, and that is redemption, restoration, and the kindness of God.
Mm-hmm.
That is our story.
Yeah.
Jesus is the hero of our story.
Mm-hmm.
We, as we mentioned, we are a blended family. Randy I'm his 3rd wife.
Yeah.
Randy,
Hard to count them.
Randy is my 4th husband. And in a lot of circles, those of you that are listening, you just may want to just tune out. And I encourage you not to, because our story really is a miracle in many ways. We between the two of us, we came from completely different backgrounds. Randy's an Iowa boy raised in a wonderful Christian home, grew up in a healthy church. I grew up in Southern California, as I affectionately say, by a pack of wolves. And yet, when the Lord brought us together in really just an amazing way, we both have experienced in our marriages and our families, certainly divorce, early death, betrayal, addiction, abortion,
mental health
issues, recovery, just the whole gamut. And the truth is that nobody leaves this planet unscathed. And we really want your listeners to leave today with just so much hope. It is never too late. Your story is not finished. God has a story for you. He had it before you were put in your mother's womb. He knew every wrong turn and everything that would happen to you.
Yeah.
And our life verse is Romans 8:28. And we know that God works some things, all things for the good of those who love him, who are called. And if you're listening to us today and you have Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you are called. And so that scripture is for you.
Yeah.
I think we should just end right there. I mean, I feel like I'm supposed to say amen and, we can leave. Like, that was incredible. I hear you saying so many things, and I love just the invitation even to the listener to say, hey, 3rd wife, 4th husband, don't leave. No, don't go yet. Stay. There's more to come. Thank you for such a general but also such impactful overview.
I'll say too, for those of you who have been married 6 months or 60 years, stay in the game. As much as it depends on you. I know we both experience, sometimes that's just not what happens. Mm-hmm. There are people that choose out. And we're all here to learn our lessons. We're going from glory to glory. We're saved, but we're in that process of sanctification. And we have dear friends that have been married forever. And they experienced all the things that we've experienced, and they chose to stay married. They chose to say yes. And that's not everybody's story. But the point is that we all learn our lessons. We choose to heal and we carry on. You can restore your relationships. You may not, it may be too late for a marriage, but it is not too late as much as it depends on us to end well, and as much as depends on us to bring healing and restoration. When we came together and we started this work with our kids, they were all grown, all 5 of them. Two of them at the time were not walking with the Lord. One of them had been a very chronic and serious alcoholic Satanist for 17 years.
Wow.
We have miracle after miracle after miracle in our brokenness. And so I hope, doesn't matter where you are, folks, this is a good day.
If he can do it for us,
He can do it for anybody.
He certainly can do it for anybody.
Yeah, well, I think would be atypical that a couple gets together and, their third and fourth marriage, and they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start a ministry to marriages and families. So I know that's a work of God in your life. Tell us a little bit about, how your healing and just breakthrough that you experienced became a gift that you're now giving to other families through the work that you do, like the Family Reformation Project.
Man, great question. So in 2016, I was on my side of the journey. We didn't know each other yet. We went through a recent divorce, and I was at the lowest point in my life. I mean, I'm a lifetime ministry guy since I was 12 years old. That's been my entire passion, was to advance his kingdom, not phone it in, but I mean, all wholeheartedly everything. And my second wife left. My first wife left as well. And so I was a single dad with 3 kids, and my kids were so devastated. They were busted up emotionally. They had had 2 terrible experiences. I'd kept my relationship very strong with them, but I was the lowest place. And I said to the Lord, I can't do this. I told him, my language was, I got to take my foot off the gas for a while, because my family's hurting. I'm broken. Like, I don't know how to go from here. And he spoke to me, he said, Randy, just love your family. I said, that's all you want from me right now? And he said, yeah, just love your family. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And I woke up literally the next morning, and I had hope. And I began to think with God, where do we go? And, he showed me, you got to come find out fresh how I do family. I mean, I'm ministry trained, I'm educated, all that. Didn't matter. I'd missed something in the whole DNA of it and the process. And so I did. I went to him and just dug and listened and waited. And he opened up my eyes fresh out of the Word of God to see God's design for family, God's design for generations, his patterns, his ways. And it just all made sense. And I like to say, the staff that I had in my hand, which was a lifetime of leadership development, training, experiential learning, discipleship, mentoring, all that. And I began to see God's patterns and think about how we could create experiential learning modules to be able to equip our children to heal, and then in a way that not only are we healed, but they're equipped to do it with our grandkids. And I finally had, late that year, without going too much detail, I had a sit down with my kids, and I said, I just took responsibility, and I wept before them, and I said, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me for my part in all of this mess. I know you're all hurting. I'm hurting. And I'm not okay to leave it like this. And if you're willing to walk with me, I believe we can restore, we can heal our family, and God has something special for us. And all the 3 kids, again, 2 of my 3 were not serving God, said, okay, Dad, they're adults at this time. They're whatever, young 20s or mid 20s. And they said, okay. And so we started to use these tools together, and we started to heal, and we started to connect and forgive and love and listen and create a family culture that we hadn't had for 27 years. And that next year, then we just, I began to just continue to lean into it. And then it was in the fall of 2017 that I met Leslie. You can kind of pick it up from there if you
No,
want.
that's a whole other podcast story. But I will say we
Yeah, that's a
we
good
knew
one.
each other from the time we met. It was about 6 months. And in that 6 months, we spent all of 2 weeks together in each other's physical company.
Mm.
Really, really miraculous story. Randy was looking for a wife at that time. I was three strikes you're out. I was going to write a dark comedy, about that. And just miraculously, the Lord brought us together. And so, in those 2 weeks that we spent together, we were fully submitted. We'd been very broken in our stories, very, very broken, and we'd also been healed. And I was in a great place. Like, I'm like, Lord, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do. My kids are grown. I'm all in, like, whatever you want to do. And when we met and came together and spent that time together, just again, there's so much miraculous stories in here. Right out of the chute, day one, I jumped right in with both feet with what he'd been doing with his three adult children.
My kids welcomed her in.
Yeah. And what we did differently too was
This
in
is
our
important.
previous marriages, while we had both been walking with the Lord in our various paths, we really made those decisions on our own.
Mhm.
Like, we fell in love and we decided to get married to those people. And this time it was like, slow your roll, guys.
Mhm.
When I say, oh, we spent 2 weeks together, people are like, that's a little quick. But we really slowed our roll. And what we did was, in humility, we went to our kids and our family and the people that loved us and knew us best, and we invited them into the process. And we were completely submitted. If there were any red flags, that we were going to take our foot off the pedal, and we were going to submit and listen to wisdom this time.
Mhm.
And by God's grace, we went through those meetings and met with each other's families and friends. And some of them, my girlfriends especially, were like, girl, like, you're so amazing, and you should never be married again. Giving them good cause. But even they were thumbs up. And I'm telling you, this is not an exaggeration. We just celebrated our 7th year, and it has been
Man.
literally heaven on earth.
Mm.
We have discovered God's design for marriage in oneness with him.
Man.
that we had deeply craved our entire lives. And so when we did come together in marriage, we came in a healed state and submitted.
Yeah. I'll jump in. That's
Yeah.
so good. You do such a good job. You said the healing journey. That's important because both of us individually, for many years, we continued to say yes. We can't take any real credit. We just didn't quit. We kept leaning into the Lord, and we kept saying, I'm humble, I'm teachable, teach me, change me, grow me, whatever it takes, I'm in. And so we've both done extensive individual and even together continue to do healing work, inner healing work, deliverance. I mean, we're a all hands on deck sort of wholehearted followers. And so what began to happen was we began to heal and we began to grow, and all of a sudden, I thought I better write this down for the kids so that they have something. And so I started writing it down, and quickly it started to become a book. And then the Lord was like, this isn't just for your family. This is for all families. And I was like, wow. And so that was a labor of love. So I wrote the book, The Family Legacy, Shaping Culture from the Inside Out, and 6 protocols of how God does family, and about 10 exercises in under each one of those protocols that you do together as a family. And here's the key: to disciple your family, to instill the character and nature of God into our kids, in a way that they know how to instill it into our grandkids, and to get the generation. I know we're just nonstop, so I'm going to give you a space to jump in.
I love where you started in your story of as you're at a low place, God says, love your kids. Just love on your kids. And I think particularly when we're maybe used to accomplishment and performance, or we're driven, and that's what I hear in your story, we think that the next season will be like, okay, God, what's the next mountain to climb, or what's the next project to tackle? And we see this in recovery a lot at Pure Desire, that when someone's in that place of betrayal and there's trauma and they're like, what do we do? And they're kind of thinking along those lines, like, how do we achieve this? How do we accomplish it? And God says, I want you just to slow down, and I want you to love the people around you that I've given you. And we're just going to take it from there. Like, there's no big plan or agenda. It's love your wife or love your children.
Oh, good.
And for so many of us, this is some of my story, we don't realize all the ways in which we'd been neglecting that, because we just assume that the way we're living, like, well, yeah, of course I'm doing that. But really, it's these things I'm doing for the Lord or my career. And when he says, turn to those around you and just love on them, we start to see something about the nature of relationships and how important they are, and how much we've taken them for granted that up to that moment, maybe we've been missing.
That's powerful.
So true.
Yeah.
I think something I'm reflecting on just in hearing your guys' story, again, from the seat that I sit in here at Pure Desire, I get to work with so many people who are potentially post-group or post-counseling as I work with donors. And I think a question they're often asking is, how do I invite my kids into this story? How do I invite my family into healing? Whether that's their family of origin, right? We're like, whoa, just saw a lot of pain there. How do we, course correct that? Or specifically, how do I now not pass this on? Or to the person who's saying, whoa, some of this has already been passed on. Like, what do I do? How do I, do I start a fund for their own therapy? I'll put you through therapy or whatever that might be. But what I hear you guys saying is, no, we actually have some really practical tools or lessons. And of course, there'd have to be a willingness by these, adult children in their 20s or 30s. And I know that not everybody has adult children, but I do know that for a lot of them, they do have adult children saying, wait, how do we tell this story to them? How do we bring them into this moment? So just to say thank you guys for creating such tactical, experiences and lessons and exercises to potentially do some of this work. And just before we get to the next question, I'd love just to say, like, could you give us a glimpse at what one of those might look like, just for the audience who's listening?
Sure. I mean, the key thought here is that it is all around God's design for family. It's back to the garden, and God's design for marriage, God's design for us parenting our kids. And in short, it's really about the 3 commands God gave us. He said, be fruitful, multiply, and govern the earth, rule there. Well, be fruitful means be fruitful with what I made you, right? He said the same thing to the trees and to the fish, like, be fruitful. In other words, how I made you, make more.
Yeah, reproduce. An oak tree reproduces an oak tree. A flower reproduces a flower. A rabbit reproduces lots of rabbits. And it's not just the multiplication of children. The first word he said in the garden was be. Be what? Be what I put in you. I formed you out of the dust of the earth, and God breathed his ruach, his life into us and made us mankind. And so that word be is reproduce who you are, and you are my character and nature in a human being. So be that, multiply that. And we really believe that, marriage started in the garden, right? He took Eve out, and then he brings them back together as one. And in that, we only together can we produce life. That's in the form of natural children, but it's also the life that God breathed into us that we get to reproduce. And so in our work, you asked for something practical. The first thing we do with a family is we create an environment that's safe in the home.
A healthy family culture.
A healthy family culture. And that starts with forgiveness. And we teach people how to experientially, by the way, it's not just a download of information. How do you listen to each other? How do you hear a family member's heart? How do you listen to understand, not listen to rebut or listen to, agree or disagree, or all of those automatic ways that we can listen? And how do you make family a place where your family wants to be? We heard a gentleman not too long ago say, if I can accomplish two things with my children, one, introduce them to Jesus, and two, always be that place where they can come and bring their sin.
Mm.
We have a rule in our family, even though our kids are raised, no one is ever in trouble in our home. There is certainly opportunities to learn.
There's
and
choices
grow.
and there's consequences
choices.
and there's opportunities
for
to
sure.
grow.
Sure. But it's safe to come to mom and dad. And our adult kids know that.
Mm-hmm. That healthy family culture is a set of 10 exercises that really walks you through literally how to do this. And what we found in the family work as we did our research and talked with experts and found out was that there was no lack of theory. There was no lack of ideas, ideology, but there was a huge lack of practical step by step. Exactly how do I do this? And so we set out to fashion this in that way. And so that's the first protocol. The first 10 exercises is all about how does it get healthy and safe enough where we know God's design for family first, and then everybody's seen, everybody's heard, every voice matters, that we know how to, create a safe, trusting, loving, fun environment at home. And so that's a powerful, if we can't do that much, we really can't get much farther to create a connected family who is really being able to be discipled and choosing in. That's the first big step.
And it's important to note too that the way our work is designed to meet any family wherever you're at. So if you're not married yet, you haven't started a family yet, the family school is a great place to go to learn how to get healed from your own family stuff of origin.
Yes.
And to know before you start that process what God's design is for it. And the reality is there isn't a person on this planet that doesn't long for a healthy family. That's why when we started this work, Randy started it with his kids, and then my kids joined suit later. Mm-hmm. Even if a child is not walking with the Lord, every one of us inherently, because of the way we were designed, longs to have a healthy family. And so it took a few years for a couple of those kids to come back, but you know what? They did.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's so beautiful. It just makes me think we have so much from a group standpoint, Nick, when it comes to a Pure Desire group. That is, I often say, I feel like I'm being refamilied.
Yeah.
Like my group experience of these other men loving and seeing and knowing me, and the safety and the trust and the confidentiality.
Yeah.
I'm hearing your language. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, and many of us haven't experienced a culture of grace in our home. And even if it was unintentionally, we've experienced a culture of some fear over, I mess up, I get punished, I feel bad, and we move on. But we don't really know how to be in relationship and be imperfect. And I think learning that in group, and then what, Randy and Leslie, you all are doing is helping people see, how does your family become that place that we all want to be, but as you kind of pointed out, we don't know how. Like, no one said, what do you actually do, like, to get there? If we realize I'm kind of stuck in the punishment reward system of parenting, but I don't know how to create a culture of grace and safety in my home, those are key skills that we all need to learn.
Yeah, it's so true. And Randy and Leslie, I know for so many people, they feel broken or isolated in their pain, but then they also can sometimes potentially heal in isolation or silence. And it just seems like you guys are storytellers. It seems like you guys maybe operate in the world as people who are very willing to be hope dealers. I love that. You're like, you're going to get a dose of hope today. Would you tell us just how living your even transformed marriage, or the broken pieces of your marriage, of how telling that story has catalyzed hope for other people to believe that restoration in their marriage is possible?
Sure. So we, as we began to just take steps of obedience, develop the work, begin to share it, it crystallized pretty quickly around a word from the Lord that this was a global movement. And as we sought him how to do that, he showed us what we needed to obviously live it to give it as our value. So we continue to this day, we continue to live these practices that he's given us with our kids, adult kids. And now it's so wonderful because many of the time we'll give away leadership of these different things to our kids, and they lead, which is that transfer again. And so it's becoming, the family school is really what's crystallized. And so We've got a completely done for you local church. A to Z. We'll train your leaders. We'll train your small group leaders. We'll all the lesson plans, all the videos, all the leaders guides, all the practical stuff, how the small group will go. There's small group element of every week's 15 lessons. There's 45 minutes of small group and then 45 minutes of large group where you learn a new practice and practice that practice together before going home for the week and applying it in your family and come back the next week. In the first 45 minutes, you debrief what you've learned. But I mean, the stories now, and this is totally the Lord, and we're really just getting started. There's been over 20,000 families so far that we've been able to disciple in these ways. Um, our podcast is in 49 nations now, over 11,000 listeners. We didn't even set out to do that. We wanted to make an archive for our own kids so that they have a reservoir, and God just continues to keep taking it. Our work now is in 3 languages, and we see the vision now clearly: 1 billion families and their generations discipled in the top 12 languages of the world. And so it just, as people walk this journey with us, they begin to practice it, and they come back to class weeping. You guys know what this is like. Like when you get healed and you have a breakthrough, and where there was no hope, there's no future, there's no way forward. The shame is mile high, and God comes and gives you breakthrough, and you're restored to Him and to each other and your family. It just blows the doors off. But when you do that with your kids, and your kids, like at 3 and 4 years old, start to have coaching conversations, they can coach their parents, where they can take their place in the family and say, hey, we're not living by our agreements. Can we, how do we get back into agreement? And so this has, I think, been the big surprise, is the little children along the way that come up and start living the work, and you're wondering, well, are they really getting it? And they're taking leadership in their families. Go ahead.
Yeah. We have a real value for vulnerability led leadership. And you guys know this in those recovery circles too, that it's not via promotion, it's via attraction. John, to your question. And because we live it to give it, because we're vulnerable with our story, and there's real fruit, we're still in process. We're not perfect. Oh, yeah. Our family's not perfect, but it is being transformed before our eyes. And we live that way, very, very open and vulnerable. And that definition of being vulnerable is being open to being injured. But when we are in families that it's not safe to be vulnerable, you're not going to be vulnerable. And so there's a real patience and trust that gets established in the home that's first and foremost. And that might happen quickly and it might happen slowly, but we know that it happens, and we're living it and we're experiencing it. And when people meet us, they're like, wow, there's just, there's something about you guys. This is not tooting our own horn. It's like, you're so humble. It's like, well, we've been humbled.
We have a lot to be humble about.
We've been broken.
Yeah.
But we like to say we trust people that walk with a limp that have been healed. And wherever you are in your family journey, in your addiction journey, whatever it is, there is hope, there is light. It's coming. And it's not like it's way, 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 way far out there. It's actually, I had this little revelation just a few weeks ago. The word says that we're to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. And in my immaturity, I always thought that meant I had to work on my salvation, had to work really hard on overcoming my sin. And that's actually not what that passage means. It means to work it out. And if you have Jesus in your heart, if you have the Spirit of God in you, let me assure you, it's already been done. You are perfect and pure white clean through the blood of Jesus. And now we get to just simply together
Bring it forth.
bring it forth. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to do that in an environment in your family or in your groups where you actually are seen for who you are. So much of our work is identity based. We believe that really the problem with families. I'll kick it to you because this is your work and you.
I want to make sure they can feedback and answer questions. But what we identified the family, what really is broken that needs to be fixed. You got to identify the problem before you fix it.
For sure.
Or you don't. So to us, what the Lord shows was identity drift was the biggest problem. We don't know who we are. We don't know who God is. We don't know why we're here. The second problem was the failure to self-govern well. We don't govern our being the way God made us and empowered us to live from the Spirit, to inform our mind, to carry out in our emotions, and to walk it out in our body. We don't know how to live in order that way. We don't know how to self-govern very well. And the third one was, and this one stings a little, it's the choice to not steward the family as God designed. There's been a few thousand years at least where it's been very clear how God designed family, really longer. But knowingly or unknowingly, we make a choice not to do it that way. We do it our own way. And those three core problems are really what all the work addressed to get us back to God's design.
I want to go back to where you guys kind of started the question, because I love what you said, that you're living it to give it. You are willing to say we're in, marriages 3 and 4, and we have adult children, and yet we're learning and we're growing and we're hearing from the Spirit and we're implementing new things and we're looking to integrate it with our kids and not just assume, which I think is why I was bringing this up, because a lot of couples can feel like, well, I wish I could have, when my kids were little, I could have gone back and taught them more about biblical sexuality and health. And if I had been further, now it's like it's too late. Like they're grown kids now. But to see that mindset of saying, if I'm still growing and learning, I can keep integrating that into my family and passing it on to my kids. And I think your approach obviously is going to give people a whole bunch of new ways that they might do that they might take their recovery story of sexual brokenness and say, well, how does that become more than just a story about our sexuality, but kind of encompass our whole family and living under God's design? But I think it starts with that belief that it's not too late. If a family's in there, the couple's in their 50s and 60s with adult kids, to say we can still have an impact on our kids. And I think that's what you also said, Randy, that's so important. God designed and made us for family. And so even kids that are running away from the Lord, and I've tried to say this to parents, they are still watching you, moms and dads. They are still paying, even if a part of them says, I don't care what you think, they were made to care. And a part of them is looking to you for their cues in life and about themselves. And so I think it's never too late. And you're saying that in your own story and in the ministry that you've created.
We really believe that whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end, because all of culture is downstream from family by God's design. In other words, as goes the family, so goes the culture. That's been actually proven historically. I studied 8 civilizations in the book. And the reality was that one of the top 2 reasons why civilizations fall is because family falls. And so I know those are big ideas, family legacy and shaping culture from the inside out, but it really is God's design. We can't help do that. For good or bad, human beings and families shape the world we have. The leaders at the gates of culture right now are making decisions to govern. And those decisions are either corrupt or they're in agreement with God. And we have those consequences based on that. And those leaders came from families, and they have the character they have primarily based upon their families and their family experience and the generational influence and so many other things. So if we don't get in the middle of that when it's our time on the clock, is how we say it, when it's our shift, if we're not punching our card saying, I'm going to do everything I can with you, God, your way, to ensure that my generations know you and can turn this around so that the children and the generational flow from this house will love you and serve you. And when it's their turn at the gates of culture to lead, they'll lead like you.
Yeah. And you guys know, because you're in the recovery arena, right? Addiction doesn't just affect the person that's addicted, and it doesn't just affect the marriage because of the addiction.
That's right.
It affects the entire family.
Mm-hmm.
And God created us in the context of family, and we're all part of the same family.
Yeah.
All of us. There's going to be a groom at the end of this story, and he's coming for a bride. And there's going to be an eternal family. And so this mindset, and we know the enemy works this way, especially in addiction. He isolates us and he takes us away, get the sheep away from the herd. And while my personal story was a lot of one-on-one time alone with the Lord, we actually were designed to heal in community, in family. And that's so important when you're in that recovery and restoration place in your life, that what you do from this point on absolutely can shift the trajectory of your family moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
There may be some marriages or relationships that don't repair, but you absolutely, as much as it depends on you, you can shift the trajectory of your family line. For me and our family, it was my mom. My mom got born again in her 50s and completely turned her life around, and it totally changed the trajectory of our family.
For me, it was my grandfather.
Yeah.
This quote came today. It's so good. I'll stop with this. And the quote was essentially, you may not have come from a good family, but make sure good family comes from you.
Yeah.
Powerful.
That's
quote.
good.
It makes me think there was a donor I was connecting with out of the Ohio area, Nick, and I've asked so many people this over my time here at Pure Desire, that who were you and who are you now becoming? Because I think that's a question of movement, right? Like something has changed. Fundamentally, something has changed. And he answered that he was a ghost in his own home, neglecting the relationships that mattered most. And then he became a present husband and father to the people who mattered most to him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if that was it, like that would be more than enough. And I'm just even thinking about, as we're approaching Christmas this December, the amount of family time that is going to be happening, right? And just thinking, I loved what you guys said regarding vulnerability and leadership. Vulnerability equals leadership. And I think some of the greatest gifts I've received from my parents regarding the restoration of my family of origin has been their humbleness and their vulnerability, and they're willing to go first by saying, hey, we know we didn't do this right. Would you forgive us? Oh my goodness, the safety and the trust, like they are continuing to grow as well into their 50s. They're not done. And so I don't know, Nick, I just feel like the gift of vulnerability and going first could be critical as we're approaching Christmas this December.
Yeah. Well, and so much of that, as you guys are talking about, it's bringing our life, bringing our families under alignment with God's design. And we see that obviously in the realm of sexuality, and seeing that, in my own story, it was my misaligned desires. It was my disordered way of seeing myself or others around me. It was being out of sync with how God had created my mind to work and allowing it to be shaped by other things. And so healing and recovery so often is coming under alignment of God's governance. That's what you guys have been talking about. And so as a question, in the Family Reformation Project, you teach that family is God's original government. So how does seeing our family through that lens, it may be a terminology that people haven't connected, the term of government to family, how does it help us receive God's gift of order, healing, and identity in our homes?
I can answer this one pretty quick. You'll be happy. So we cannot not govern. I know that's double negative. God's design is that we're fruitful, that we multiply, and we govern. Meaning, to govern means this: to direct the flow of. That's what government means.
That's good.
So whether it's resources or ideas or laws or whatever we're saying yes to, we're going to allow this, and no to, we're going to disallow this. That is the act of governing. And that's literally what we do. Every individual that has individual agency, that's a theological term, meaning I'm responsible for me to the Lord. I have my choice, my soul, and I am responsible for that. And I'll give an account for that. And every single one of us will give an account for really how we govern. How did we choose to agree and disagree with beliefs? Because that's governing. Did we agree with God or did we disagree with God? Well, some of both, but there's remedies God made for all that. So this is the connection of governing. Families will govern, individuals will govern, whether they do it intentionally or not, whether they do it for good or bad. We cannot not govern. That's who he made us to be.
And we do it out of the belief of who we are. The two most important, well, there's three, but the two most important questions all of us need to answer is, number one, who is God? Actually, who is he? Who do we believe him to be? And we can't answer the second question is, who am I? If we don't answer that first question as believers, because we came from him. We are his design. And so if we've got a distorted understanding of who our Heavenly Father is, we're going to have a distorted understanding of who we are. And that governing flows out of who we are. The word says, right? As a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so are they. It's out of the heart flow the issues of life.
And so people govern in the earth. I said it earlier. At every stage, different metrons, right? Whatever measure of grace we're called to. You have a national, international ministry. Well, that's your metron. Well, somebody has a family. That's their metron. Somebody has a business, or somebody has a church, or they're a police officer in a community, or they're a musician. And that's God's decision about what he entrusts them with. But in that place, they're actually governing. They can't not govern. Mm-hmm. And so if we believe this, then we have to say, well, where does that get fashioned? It happens in the family. It happens generationally, and it happens. They say, well, it happens in the church. Well, yeah, it does. But, and I'll stop with this. And I love the church. It's his bride, and it's good. But we have to be honest. If we were doing such a good job at discipling our families and discipling our youth and the next generation, 70% wouldn't leave their faith when they get out of high school, at home, and go to college. It wouldn't be that. We have results that are directly screaming that there's a better way. Yeah. And that better way, we believe, is for all of culture, including the church, to teach parents. I don't care what career field you go into, you got to study for it. You got to have some specialized knowledge to be in finance, or even to be in the trades, or if you're going to be a doctor, you have. And many careers, you have to have ongoing education so that you can stay up to date. We do as coaches and everything. Well, where did we get our training for family? Where was the place that somebody said, no, if you want to do family right, you gotta get some skills, and you got to get some understanding about what this is all about, and you got to keep learning, you got to keep going back. Well, we believe that's the family school. In the one of the answers. There's many that God has risen up, but we can't not govern, and that's something we need to think about, because the words we speak alone, if we just take that one thing of the words we speak in a day, we will bring life or death to many things around us, many people around us, many assignments around us. So we're powerful in God's design, and we govern, so we better govern well.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, that it kind of starts with some self-governance. And as I, practice my agency of becoming aligned with God, it's then out of that, I bring it into my family. And I think that's so much of what we see with like recovery stories through Pure Desires. We're just trying to encourage parents to take what they're learning in their own healing journey, and then through that, integrate it into their family. So you're learning emotional awareness and being able to communicate what you're feeling and where it's coming from. And inviting that from your family. You're learning about your past pain and the lies that it led you to believe, and how you're now confronting those lies with true experiences of God's love and grace. And so bringing that out and helping your kids see what experiences might they have had that have caused them to believe lies. And it's taking the things I'm learning to bring and again, this is the agency I have. I'm bringing myself in alignment with God. Yeah. And as we are as a couple, then just translating to say, oh, how do we, as you said, like out of us, how do we direct that energy as a family and do that together? I really think in that regard, it's maybe more simple and straightforward than we expected it to be.
And when you're doing that, right, that governance of even your personal agency or identity or you as an individual then leads back to being fruitful and multiplying and governing. I'm like, whoa, there's a cycle here. And I think even when it comes to sexual addiction or betrayal trauma, oftentimes sexual addiction floods this river. This is an analogy I've used before, but like there's something powerful to who we are as image bearers and how we steward our body, specifically when it comes to sexuality. And sexual addiction or brokenness often looks like a river flooding. And I love that language of what is governance? Wait, it's to direct the flow of. And so when that river doesn't have direction and it floods, it kills everything. But when our sexuality is governed or stewarded or managed, we are now redirecting the flow. And what happens? A river inside its banks nourishes everything around it, and it is fruitful and it multiplies, and then it's governed again, and we teach other rivers how to be governed. Oh, it's just like,
it's just so great. The water in the banks is life-giving. The water out of the banks is life-destroying.
It absolutely is. And
there's revelation here. You guys are getting it, right. You're sensing that the Lord's opening it up, and that's a sign to us that we're on to something that he's behind, right? That he designed. Yeah, well, and it's good.
Randy and Leslie, I love that your guys' story, of course, yes, it was personal, and then it began to impact your family. I know for so many families, they're like, well, this is just our story. I think even then there can be this element of like concaving a bit, like, okay, yes, we've got something good. But I think what's so beautiful for you guys is your story then became somewhat of a movement. And I'm just imagining that there are people who are listening saying, wait, what if our story could be like that? And so could you just give some encouragement to people who are listening regarding how their family, how their restoration personally and familially could actually begin to multiply and to begin to impact other people?
Yeah, I'll say this, I'll be short. Randy has a saying that wisdom, the wisdom of God is cloaked in simplicity. And this is not hard. It begins with a surrendered heart to, yes, Lord, whatever your way is, I'm going to do it that way. And you start there. You know, the church, all of us, we're just living out of order. And it's not hard to get back into order. It just begins with posturing ourselves into receiving the love of a loving Father, because contained in his love is all of the strategy. Everything that you need is contained in his love. And so it just begins, receive his love, receive it. Let his love come in and wash you like a cup under the kitchen faucet. You don't have to shake it and scrub it. You just need to posture yourself underneath it. And his love and his healing, all of that will flow into you. Bring all that stuff out and over the top so that you are living out of the overflow.
So good. I would answer that. That's so good. I would answer that like this. If you don't have hope and you don't think it's possible for you, you're just believing a lie.
Yeah.
There is hope. This is his design. He can make, we have seen some of the most accelerated change happen in marriages, in families, in parenting, when we just do it God's way. When we just say, you know what, I've been trying all my own ways out of this and with my own strength.
Get my own needs met.
I confess I can't do this alone. I don't have the ability actually to fix this, to make my family better, make us love each other. And so if I can do that and humble myself, and then in the fear of the Lord say, okay, Lord, your way, your way, let's do that. And by the way, I can't even do your way in my strength. So I'm waiting on you. I'm counting on you. I'm trusting you. If you'll do this, I'm right with you. And that is the heart. And actually, to what Leslie said, that is not hard. The lie is, oh, that's so hard. Oh, well, okay. The hard part is getting from frustration and the constant addiction to my own way.
It's the releasing. My way looks like clenched fists.
Mm.
And it's as easy as, I mean, if you're even listening, like put your fists together and clench them as hard as you can. And all it takes is a decision to say, ah, and you release, and you can feel that. You can't receive when your fists are clenched and you're in your own way. But when you will open up your hands and release it, that's when you can receive.
Yeah. A good friend of ours often says we're all addicted to our own way of thinking. That there's a way of thinking that has become normal to us, and we're really hesitant to let go of it because it feels familiar, it's normal to us, and yet we see that it's producing a lot of pain and brokenness. And so we talk about it so much that the healing process is about letting go, surrendering to a process, ultimately primarily surrendering to God, to his rule, to his way, and really to other people. I've got to let people in, I've got to be known, and a lot of that is this letting go. And I think the same could be said of even in recovery then, of taking my journey to become my family's journey or to tell others. There is a letting go, maybe of my reputation or fears I have, how people will think of me. What if they know this part of my story? And like you said, it's letting go. And so often the fear is then I'll have less. But as you just said so well, Leslie, when our hands are open, God can put so much more in them than we ever thought possible. And we get to hear those stories. You know, John gets to hear them all the time of the couples who do come back and say, man, what God is doing in our family, because we quit trying to control it or we quit trying to do it our way. We just said, Lord, we want what you want. We want your way. We're not going to hold on to these things. And they're seeing God at work. And it's encouraging because it does seem in that regard, it's simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. You know, it's a simple thing to say we need to let go and surrender to God's ways and his process, but that's not always easy because we have become so addicted to our way of thinking or our way of doing it that moment of surrender really challenges us. But in it, we find hope and new life in Christ.
Yeah. If we could just for a moment just kind of flip the tables, we're so grateful for the work that you guys do. We can't, almost every family that we work with, either them in the marriage or them, the children or somewhere, there's sexual infidelity, there's pornography. It's just so rampant, which you guys know. I'm just saying as an outsider that what you're doing is so critical.
Yeah.
And we love, because we pay attention. We love that you're using an inside out transformation healing, because so many programs are outside in, right? Behavior modification, blah, 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 try hard. It's pointless. It's useless. But that's not what you guys carry. And what you're doing is so needed all over the planet. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor. I remember early on in my recovery journey, somebody simply saying, we act upon what we believe. And that was such a shift for me. I'm like, wait, oh my goodness, like what do I believe? Or what have I been believing that's wrong? And how do I believe truth? And I love that the heart, the head, and the hands. I think Sexual Integrity 101 does such a clear job of outlining that, of what we believe then leads to what we think and what we feel, which then leads to how we act. And that's so simple, but it's just, again, the kingdom of God, the blueprint, it's not hard. It's simple. Like there is simplicity here that can be really helpful. And then once you understand that, it's going, okay, well, what beliefs or cognitive distortions or lies am I believing about God, myself, and others?
Yes.
How do I begin to replace those to live into right relationship with God and with others, right? Healing in community, healing in a family type context is just so integral. We weren't made to do this life alone. We were created in the image of a God who is in himself perfect relationship.
Family.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Dr. Randy and Leslie, this has been an awesome conversation. And I want to give you just a moment to share like some final encouragement, because I think for some people listening, this might feel a little overwhelming. They're thinking, I'm just trying to get sober from looking at porn, or I'm just trying to save my marriage. And the thought of creating a legacy in my family and that, it might feel like that is just too big for me, or it's too late for me, or too whatever. And yet you have seen it happen in families over and over. So what encouragement would you leave with listeners that maybe just feel overwhelmed by this whole concept of leaving a legacy in my family? How would you encourage them as we wrap up today?
Man, Be loved. Just be loved. Open yourself up and be loved. Everything you need to fix everything, you've got to receive it. Believe and receive. Just be loved. Start there. Get quiet in the presence of God and let him love on you and let him show you what's stopping you from receiving it, because you're lovable, worth dying for.
I would say, I would say if you don't think it's possible, if it's too late, then you don't have a big enough God. Your view of God is that he is not able to do something that he can do all day, every day, all day, all the time. So if you're thinking, wow, it's too much, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know if I can do that, just admit you can't do it.
Good place
alone.
To start. Yeah.
It's apart from him, we can do nothing.
That's right.
With him, we can do all things.
Amen.
So just make a decision to agree with God. I can't do it alone. And you're big enough to do this. And while no matter what it looks, remember that's faith, right? Not what we see. We walk by faith, not by sight. What we see, what we saw while we started this and beyond, it was bad. Bad.
Real bad.
Some people still think it's bad. But we made a change in what we believed. And we believed someone like God was big enough and able to do this when we couldn't. And we just kept saying yes and believing and engaging fully, wholeheartedly. And he did it. He gets the credit. He's the hero. It isn't us. It isn't Randy and Leslie. It's possible. Don't believe the lies.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed because we can't see the full journey from where we are, for maybe still just battling our way out of addiction, to that ideal like legacy in our family. And that road just, it feels overwhelming. But if we come back to faith and our belief in God and saying, what can I do today? And that's one of the things I love about Pure Desires group materials, is that saying that God's not asking you to be pure right now forever. He's asking you, what can you do today? And we draw that, and it's like, well, okay, I can trust God today and walk with him and do that next thing. And then, okay, and he'll lead you tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And one day you'll look back and realize, oh, I'm leaving a legacy in my family, but it is not the way I would have done it. It's not the road I would have chosen. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's the whole point. Because you had to walk by faith. You had to trust God and others a step at a time. And he led you into the things he had for you. And if you could have seen the whole thing, you probably would have messed it up, because then you wouldn't have walked by faith. You'd have done it in your own strength. And so if you're in that place of feeling a little overwhelmed by this thought, or how do I leave a legacy in my family? Like, God's not asking you to do all of that right now today. He's asking you to trust him and to take the next step in your healing journey, to love your kids or love your spouse, to love yourself well, and then tomorrow get up and do it again, and he will continue to lead you down that path.
Yeah, and Randy and Leslie, your words just remind me, my friend recently sent me a text just of a quote from Adam Young. He has a podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves, and the quote simply said this: if you want to commit violence against the kingdom of darkness, be kind to yourself.
That's good.
Yeah.
And
God's kind.
I hear you saying, receive his love. Like, meet him today in this moment, and kindness is what leads us to repentance, or the changing of our mind, or committing to do the work you're talking about, Nick, on a daily basis. Is what does it look like to be kind to ourselves? I think for so many of us, we've beaten ourselves up with shame and guilt and condemnation, which has just furthered this behavior, these beliefs that actually don't lead to right behavior. And so, just to close simply by saying, if you want to do violence against the kingdom of darkness, choose to be kind to yourself today.
Yeah. So Dr. Randy and Leslie, this is awesome. Where can our listeners catch up with you, and where can they find more information about the Family Reformation Project?
You can go to winthefamily.org, winthefamily.org, or you can find us on Spotify and Apple and everywhere else podcasts. It's Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie.
All right, Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie, or winthefamily.org, and we will put that in the show notes.
Wonderful.
So as we
Awesome.
close this conversation, we're reminded that healing is never meant to stop with us. It's meant to flow through us, and the Family Reformation Project shows that no story is too broken, no family too far gone for restoration. That when couples share their journey, they offer others the courage to believe that healing is possible. And through practical protocols and a deep understanding of God's design, this movement equips families to reclaim their identity, purpose, and legacy. And so, Dr. Randy and Leslie, thank you for being a part of all that. Thank you for sharing some of your journey with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bless
guys.
you, Nick. Bless you,
Yes.
John.
So good to be with you guys.
Yeah, loved having you. And if you're a fan of this content, of today's show, please subscribe, share it with somebody else, write us a review. Trust me, all of these are ways that more people can find this life-giving content. And if you want more information about Pure Desire groups, resources, or counseling, you can visit us at puredesire.org. Journey on, my friends. You are not alone.